Hello, Dr. Carmen Bryant, Psychological Health Consultants and Services, and Redefining Yourself, a program that was developed for women who are contemplating leaving, needing more knowledge or education about, or those that are recovering from domestic violence, specifically narcissist abuse. Today, I just wanted to come and talk to you a little bit about redefining yourself. First of all, we're dealing with domestic violence, which of course narcissist abuse falls under domestic violence. It is domestic violence, and hopefully you've been watching the videos that give you a definition of domestic violence and giving you some understanding of what narcissist or narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder is. Today I just wanted to talk a little bit about defining yourself, redefining yourself, words, the power of words. And I want you to think, words are powerful, and the weapons used by an abuser when it comes to power and control is word. Usually they don't start off putting their hands on you. They start off with words. Either they're going to manipulate, but they start off with words. That's why talk therapy or mental health counseling is so powerful, because we use talk, we use words. Cognitive behavior therapy, also known as CBT, is to change the way that you think, change your cognitions in order to change your behavior. The most powerful thing is your thoughts, how you think, and your thoughts also manifest themselves in behaviors. Usually when we sit in counseling, it's not really the words that you're speaking. There's thought behind the words that you're speaking, but we watch how you say what you say and the energy behind what you say. A lot of times, majority of language consists of nonverbal communication, your facial expressions, what you're really not saying is what you're saying. And so we observe a lot, and people observe. Well, an abuser observes too. Remember, you're dealing with a predator and a prey. And an abuser, especially a narcissist, observes behavior, observes how you respond to things that you say. The Freudian slip is when people slip and say something, and then they say, oh, I didn't mean to say that. Well, they meant to say that. It slipped out. That was what was on their mind. Well, they also watch for cues in your behavior and your facial expressions. When they say things, it might be that momentary facial expression, like, any kind of small cue, but they're very, very in tune with watching. A lion watches his prey and picks out the weakest one. It doesn't mean that women are weak, but what they're doing is they're looking for those the pain. A lion looks for the animal that is either sick, exhausted, weak in certain areas, where narcissists prey on people, and they look for, things that we may need to work on, or, they take that as a weakness and they prey on that weakness. If you're lonely, they'll be everything that you want them to be in order to pull you in, so they can punish you with that thing they think is a weakness for you. And so I wanted to talk about how powerful words are. In your mind, you have thoughts. Now think about this for a minute. A lot of us are, let's say victims and those recovering, and those have recovered from or out of, or those that have experienced domestic violence. You have been defined by the abuser. Now think about this. An abuser doesn't even like themselves, so why would they like you? If a person, and most of them are very negative people. Narcissists are very negative, angry, and bitter people. Most people don't see that. And remember, we were talking about the cerebral and the somatic narcissist. Those, and we were talking about the different definitions and subtypes of narcissists. Go back and watch that to give you an idea of the type of narcissist that you're dealing with. But, you have the narcissists that are covert and overt. The overt ones, they're very, very obvious, and the covert ones are very, hidden. So the world may see them as very charismatic and very nice, and there's no possible way that this person can be like this. Well, by the time that they're through basically smearing you or making you look bad. You're the one that looks crazy. You're the one that has the issues. And so, of course, they play that role, and they manipulate people into thinking that it's you and not them. So, but if a person doesn't like themselves, abuser abuses because they have no control of themselves. So they abuse, or they try to be in control of their environment and people around them. Well, if I don't like you, if I don't like myself, and I have nothing positive to think of myself, then my projection of you is how I think about myself. I'm going to see you the way that I see myself. Narcissists tend to believe that everybody thinks the same way they do. So if they're manipulative, if they're liars, if they steal, if they, you have those that cheat. And when I say cheat, meaning not just being promiscuous, or, when I mean cheat, meaning you cheat IRS, cheat, in their business, they're very liars, liars. And that's one of the traits of a narcissist as well. But they assume that everyone is just like them. So when they, if they see anything that looks similar to them, they assume that you are just like them. You think just like them. So they handle you the way that they see themselves. And you may be totally opposite. You may be a pretty honest, an honest person, in all honesty, honest person. But they view you the way that they see themselves. So they project themselves onto you. So they handle you. You're a screen. So you're this big screen, and they're projecting onto this big screen. So they're handling you the way that they see themselves. And if you have any similarities to them, even though it may be totally opposite, but if you have any similarities to them, they automatically assume that you are just like them. So they handle you the way that they are, and they project on this screen. You become a screen. You're not even a person anymore. You are a screen that they're projecting themselves on, and they're handling you the way that they see themselves. And so words are very powerful, because an abuser and narcissist, they tend to define you based on how they perceive you. So you may be living off of the words of someone else and the projections off of someone else. This is not even how you define yourself. Let's look at the word define, or definition. It means to give meaning, to describe. It's an explanation, or explanation of, or a classification. A classification meaning organized, or established, or shaped, or grouped, or arranged, or placed, or positioned. Characterized meaning to describe, define, label, depict, portray, brand. And it's a statement expressing the essential nature or the character or personality of something. How can an abuser define or give you a definition when they have no definition of themselves? They can't define themselves. They don't know anything about themselves. So they have the audacity to define you. And you live off of the definition of someone else. And in actuality, they're probably defining their own self, and they're projecting it on you. So you're taking the responsibility, you're taking accountability of how they think of themselves. And you're living off of the words and the definition of someone else. And so I looked up the word narrative, because in your head, your brain creates narratives, creates stories, and it's a way of presenting or understanding a situation or series of events that reflect and promote a particular point of view or set of values. So now you may see things a certain way, and your abuser will take the liberty to manipulate what it is you see and recreate the narrative in your head. So now you believe the narrative that they have given you. Let me give you an example. And I gave this example in counseling one time. Even though we laughed about it, it was very true, because I remember seeing it on a movie. Man gets caught with another woman. Woman sees it, confronts him, not face to face, but confronts him later on, and says, "I saw you with so-and-so." And he says, you're confused. That wasn't so-and-so. So-and-so, or my sister, looks just like so-and-so. So you're confused. So now he's planting a seed of doubt in that woman. And she's like, "No, I know what I saw. I know who that is. I know her." And once again, no, you're confused. See, this is always what happens. You're a jealous individual, and so a lot of times when you see something, you create this thought in your head, and blase, blase, blase. Some of that sounds familiar to some of you guys. But now he has recreated a new narrative in your head, and you believe not what you saw. You don't even trust your own opinion and what you saw, but now you have recreated a narrative in your head, and you've allowed your mind to come up with its own story based off of what he just told you, when it is what it is. And what happens is a lot of women that come out of domestic violence and narcissist abuse don't even trust their own thoughts. They don't trust their own opinions. I have people that constantly ask, is that right? Is that right? Am I thinking wrong? Does that mean I'm crazy? You know, and I have to tell them, you have to trust your own opinion. You have been programmed not to trust your own opinion. And the opinion or the narratives or the words that have been imposed on you, you are running off of somebody else's thoughts. Someone told you were crazy. Someone told you you have mental health issues. Someone told you were dumb. Someone told you that you probably need to go to inpatient. And I've seen this over and over and over again. And in actuality, it's not that serious. They're probably suffering from post-traumatic stress or complex post-traumatic stress because they've been in a domestic violence situation. They've been manipulated. You know, everything is a fear tactic to force you back in compliance to where the abuser thinks you should. I even heard of an abuser telling a woman to sit down. So she sits down. He's angry because she complies, so he makes her stand up. She stands up. He gets angry, so he chokes her. You know, think about it for a minute. How confusing is that? That lets you know the confusion in the mind of an abuser. You know, but you can't operate in confusion. And I know it's hard when you're in the situation, and when you first come out of the situation, it takes a while to change old thought patterns. If you've been programmed that way, and the longer the relationship has been, you know, and the more entwined you are in the relationship, sometimes the longer the recovery. And I say that because think about, the more intense the surgery, the longer the recovery period is. You know, when you have a baby, you don't go out the same day after you give birth to a baby and play football, you know, and if you play football. You know, but you have a recovery period where your body has to, your body's been in shock. A lot of people die of shock. Another thing narcissists will do is there are a lot of people in prison that have narcissistic personality disorder. Not all narcissists kill, but, you know, they're so vengeful, they're so rageful that they don't mind pushing you to a point where you feel like committing suicide. First of all, it's not you, it's them. You have to be able to separate what is their thoughts and what is them, and what are your thoughts and what are you. But it's very complicated to change a mind that has been programmed and trained for so many years. Women go through grieving process, men and women. Women go through grieving process, and once again, the longer the relationship, the longer and the worse the abuse, the longer the healing process, and the longer the grieving process a lot of times. You know, women that have left, you know, jump right back into relationships. Well, why would you jump right back into a relationship? Because you know, go study the law of attraction. You will magnetize what is in you, and if you're toxic, you're going to be attracted to toxic people. And sometimes, and women will say, I always get the same type of man. No, you're still the same type of woman. You have not changed your magnetic pull. You have not changed the pull. You have not discovered who you are. You have not discovered what you like, what you don't like. You haven't put up boundaries because someone has broken the boundaries with you over and over again. And so you think it's okay in order to satisfy them or in order to make them love you, that I put down my boundaries, I sacrifice to make you love you, because I make you love me because I want you to love me. Well, you need to have boundaries. You need to have standards. Whenever you have boundaries, whenever you have standards, people will comply. You develop your own value. You develop, and I'll give you an example. You know, if you look at, I don't know, some designer clothes, St. Paul, St. John, or Coach material, touch the material, and then touch the material, see if the material, you know, is quality material, but touch the material, and then go into like Joanne, or in one of those fabric stores, and walk around and touch the material. The material is the material, you know, and the value is placed on the material by the person, you know, the coach. Coach, you're paying for the name. Michael Jordan, you know, nice shoes, you know. All that money that they're spending, you're paying for his name because he has value. You have value. You have to establish value. You have to place value and standards on yourself. That right there would eliminate a lot of predators as well when you have a sense of value about yourself. When you realize you're smart, you're beautiful, you're not what people have said. You're not the words or the narrative or the scripts that people have written in your head, especially an abuser. You have to remember that the things that they're saying to you is probably how they feel about themselves. If you're quiet long enough and you listen, a lot of times they'll tell you how they feel about themselves, not you. And a lot of things that they're pointing, you're arguing. So most of the times, you know, a woman wants to argue and defend herself, that'll wear you out. They know how to wear you out. But if you just be quiet and listen, they'll tell you exactly how they feel about themselves. They'll say everything that you want to know. That's what we do in therapy. You say everything that we want to know. We just be quiet and listen to you as you talk. Well, if you sit down and you listen to an abuser talk, they'll tell you everything that they feel about themselves. But like I said, the hardest thing is to change how a person thinks about themselves. You know, once you have these scripts, and especially if you've been in a relationship for a long period of time, you have developed opinions about yourself that are probably not even your own thoughts. Then when you come in, well, I can't do this and I'm just not able to do this. Where does that come from? Because it probably didn't come from you. It probably came from the abuser that wanted to hold you hostage or abuse you economically or educationally to keep you. That's why they don't want you connecting with people that, you know, they try to limit your social interactions, you know, because you may find out how powerful you are. But think about it for a minute. Why would someone work so hard to control you, manipulate you, and change your mind if you didn't have any value? Why work so hard on something that is wrong, that is wrong unless it is right? Does that make sense? Why would someone work so hard in convincing you that your thoughts are wrong? Why, you know, why work so? You and I have our own opinions. We have our own lifestyle. I see something one way. You see something. We have our own perspective. We're individual people, you know, with our own background, with our own cultural background. You know, so in certain cultures, like my mother's German, so we're from Germany. So kissing on the lips does not necessarily mean that you're trying to enter into a relationship, and that's usually reserved for close family members and very close friends. But it is a sign of affection and love for another person. It doesn't mean anything perverse. But in other societies, a lot in American societies as well, you know, to kiss on the lips is perverted. But think about this for a minute. What if that person had been sexually molested at a young age? Their perception of innocence has changed. You know, what they think is okay now becomes something perverted, as opposed to someone that has never went that way. I mean, had that experience, and is cultural. So you see how perceptions. So if a person, an abuser, normally an abuser has been abused. Not every abuser abuses, but an abuser has been abused, and it's a learned behavior, and they're just recreating what they've been through and maybe accelerating it, and has become worse. And so remember, think about it for a minute. You know, it takes power and it takes a lot of energy to think, to reevaluate how you're thinking, and to redefine yourself. You have to go back and give yourself a new definition that's not based off of a definition that someone has given you. You can't live off of the definition of someone else and how they define you. You define yourself. You hold yourself to a certain standard. You lift up your standards. And before jumping back into a relationship, learn to heal and learn to like yourself. Because if you don't like you, then of course you're not going to like anybody else. An abuser doesn't like themselves, so why should they like you? Especially if you're confident and you're happy all the time. Misery loves company, you know. So go back, redefine yourself. And that's what I'm helping to do. You know, hopefully that's what I'm helping to do. I want you to go back and redefine yourself. You should not be living off of the definition of someone else's definition of you. You should go back and redefine yourself. Discover yourself. What colors do you like? What do you like? You know, what do you like eating? What foods do you like? Do you like being at home watching television, or are you the type of person that likes going to the movie? Some women do not like being alone. Now you have to ask yourself why you're even getting into a relationship. Are you getting in because you're tired of paying your bills by yourself? Okay, well, stop creating the bills. You know, get yourself educated. Learn to read a book. You know, learn to make your own millions of dollars, or make your own, you know, have something to offer to another person. You know, don't come in needy. You come in needy, you'll attract anything. You know, any, all socioeconomic classes of people have narcissists in them. You have wealthy narcissists, you have poor narcissists. And so depending on what you're looking for, you'll get exactly what you're looking for. You may get a narcissist or an abuser that's wealthy. They're going to pay your bills, but they're still going to abuse you, and you'll be miserable. So you have everything that you want, but yet you're miserable and you're unhappy in the relationship, and you're devalued. You have no value. If a person can't value you, if you don't put value on yourself, people are not going to put value on you. You have to put value on yourself. You have to see yourself above your situation, and that takes time to reprogram your mind. It takes time to change the way that you think about yourself. Hopefully this has helped a little bit. I'll be back as I do a little more research. I just want to come in really quick and just talk about redefining yourself. Please go to my YouTube channel under Dr. Carmen Bryant. I think it's recovering from narcissist abuse. I think that's the title of it. But Dr. Carmen Bryant, CarmenBryant, Dr. Carmen Bryant on the YouTube. Subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell so that you can be alerted whenever I post. You can also go to my professional Facebook page, which is Psychological Health Consultants and Services. I also develop a Twitter, so you're welcome to talk to me whenever you want to and ask me questions. You can also email me, DrCarmenBryant, Dr. Carmen Bryant @outlook.com. If there's certain things that you want to talk about, there's certain topics that you'd like to talk about. I had someone yesterday ask me to talk about parents, narcissistic parents and their children. And so I'm going to put together something in reference to narcissistic parents and their children. Some of you come out of narcissistic homes and you end up getting back into narcissistic relationships. And so what does it look like? Does that make you a narcissist? You may have some narcissistic tendencies because you picked up on their behavior. So your environment has maybe shaped some of the ways that you think and behave, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a narcissist. That's a personality disorder. That's a dysfunctional personality disorder. So that is developed. You just don't catch narcissism. That's not something that you just throw at someone and they catch it. But if you're coming from a narcissistic home, sometimes it's good to know what it is to have narcissistic parents. What does that look like? And that's a very intense environment anyway. To go right back into an intense environment, something that you're familiar with. So I'll talk about that as well. Send me your requests. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about. And thank you so much for tuning in and your moment of time. I know you're busy. Be well and be empowered and redefine yourself.